There is a chair at Highgrove that no one sat in, and once you understand who it was meant for, you will understand that the real story of this reunion was never about the people who came. It was about the one who stayed away. For years, the silence between a father and his son had been almost total. And then, quietly, with no cameras and no announcement, King Charles opened his door and pulled Harry close again. After everything, after the interviews, after the book, after the courtrooms, after every wound that was supposed to be permanent. A father and a son in the same room at last. I'm Edmund Hale, and what I want you to notice today is not the embrace, it is the absence. Because while Charles reached across years of pain to welcome one son home, another son chose not to come. And that empty chair, the one where the future king should have been sitting, told a truth the palace would give almost anything to hide. That the deepest wound in this family was never between the king and Harry at all. It was between the brothers, and it has not healed. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes I am going to show you exactly why this reunion happened now, after all this time, and why the one person missing from it may matter more than everyone who was there. To understand the weight of that empty chair, you have to understand what it cost to get everyone else into the room. This was not a casual family lunch. This was two men who had spent years speaking to each other, mostly through lawyers, through journalists, and through the pages of a memoir. A king who is not well, a son who left, and between them a silence so long that most people had quietly stopped believing it would ever end. So let me take you back, because you cannot feel the size of this reunion without remembering the size of the rift. It did not begin with Meghan, whatever the newspapers told you. It began decades earlier, with two small boys and the worst day of their lives. In 1997, the world watched Charles's sons walk behind their mother's coffin, William 15, Harry just 12. In that moment, they were not princes. They were two brothers who had only each other. For most of their lives, that bond held. The heir and the spare side by side, and then, slowly, the roads diverged. When Meghan entered Harry's life, and the couple married in 2018, the cracks that had always run quietly beneath the surface began to show. By 2020, they had split wide open. Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties and left for a new life across the Atlantic. A decision so seismic, the family gathered at Sandringham to try to contain it. They could not. What followed were not quiet years. In 2021 came the interview seen around the world, in which the couple accused the institution, the machine many inside call simply the firm, of coldness and of worse. In 2023 came the memoir. In its pages, Harry laid the family's most private moments bare for millions of strangers to read, including an account of a physical confrontation with his own brother. Every chapter drove the wedge deeper. Every revelation made the road back look longer. And through all of it, the man at the center, the king, mostly said nothing. Because that is what the institution does. It endures. It waits. It lets the silence do the work, and it lets the wound scar over in public view. But here is the part almost everyone misses. While the world watched the fireworks between Harry and the palace, the real fracture was happening somewhere quieter. Between the two brothers who had once walked behind that coffin together. William, we are told, took the memoir personally. He took the interviews personally. And unlike his father, William did not soften. Remember that, because it becomes the whole story. Even grief could not bring them back. When Queen Elizabeth died in 2022, the brothers appeared together for a few careful minutes at Windsor, a fragile, silent truce for the cameras. But it was choreography, not healing. And at the coronation in 2023, the distance was there for all to see. Harry came without Meghan. He was seated back, away from the center of the family. And the moment the ceremony ended, he was gone, on a flight home before the day was even over. A son present, and yet entirely alone. So why now? Why, after years in which the door stayed firmly shut, did it suddenly open? The answer is the hardest kind of answer there is, because in early 2024, the palace confirmed what no family ever wants to hear. The king was ill, cancer, treatment. And with that single word, the clock that hangs over every family, but which royals are trained to pretend does not exist, suddenly began ticking out loud. And nothing rearranges a family's priorities like the fear that time is running out. In a few moments, you will see how that fear reached all the way across the Atlantic and did what years of diplomacy could not. But first, you have to understand what it did to Harry. Because when the news of his father's illness broke, Harry got on a plane within hours. He crossed an ocean for a meeting that reportedly lasted barely half an hour. Half an hour after everything. And then, after losing his long legal battle over security in Britain, a fight he had pursued through the courts and lost, Harry spoke publicly, and for a moment the armor fell away. He said he wanted reconciliation. He said he did not know how much time his father had left. He admitted that Charles would no longer speak to him. It was not the voice of a rebel. It was the voice of a son who was frightened of running out of time. A father facing his own mortality does not think about interviews and memoirs. He thinks about his sons. He thinks about grandchildren he has barely met. And somewhere in that reckoning, Charles made a decision the institution, left to itself, would never have made. He decided that being a father mattered more than being an example. And so, this July, Harry came home. Not alone, he brought Meghan. And, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, he brought the children. Archie, Lilibet. A grandson and a granddaughter the king had seen so little of, that for one of them, this was almost a first meeting. Two small children, walking quietly into the private world of Highgrove, carrying more weight on their shoulders than they could possibly understand. Stay with me, because what happened inside those walls is only half the story. The other half is written in who chose not to walk through the door. Highgrove is not a palace. That matters more than it sounds. Charles did not summon Harry to a throne room or a state apartment or any of the grand stages where the monarchy performs itself for the world. He chose his home, the garden he has tended for decades with his own hands, the most personal place he has on this earth. And that single choice tells you something the official silence never would, that this was meant to be a father's reunion, not a king's performance. There were no cameras, no official photographs, no press release wrapped in careful palace language. By every account, it was kept deliberately, almost fiercely private. And somehow the family moved through Britain and into that meeting without the media capturing a single frame. In an age when nothing stays hidden, that silence was not an accident. It was a gift, a small, guarded space where something real might finally be allowed to happen. Queen Camilla was there. And whatever you feel about her place in this long and complicated story, her presence mattered, because it signaled that this was the inner circle, the people Charles trusts most, gathered close around him. The children played in the garden. A grandfather who has spent his entire life inside ceremony got, for a few precious hours, to simply be a grandfather. It should have been a perfect picture. A family broken for years, just beginning to mend. But if you counted the people in that room, you would have noticed that something was missing. Someone was missing. And his absence was so loud that it drowned out everything else. Because William was not there. Not in the garden, not at the table, not anywhere near it. And this was not an accident of scheduling. This was a choice. While his father reached across years of pain to bring Harry home, the future king kept his distance and made certain the world understood that his position had not moved a single inch. Where Charles chose forgiveness, William chose the line, and he did not blur it. Think about what that truly means. The king, the man with the most reason to be wounded, the most public humiliations to forgive, opened the door, but the brother would not walk through it. And in the cold arithmetic of this family, that tells you exactly where the real unhealed wound lies. Not between the crown and the runaway prince, between two boys who once stood side by side behind their mother's coffin, and who now cannot stand to be under the same roof. And here is the detail that turns this from a family drama into something almost unbearably human. William's absence was not only about anger, it was about the future. Because one day, and after his father's illness, perhaps sooner than anyone would like to say aloud, William will be king, and a king cannot afford the appearance of weakness. He cannot be seen to forgive what he has decided is unforgivable. Charles could reconcile as a father with little left to lose. William must calculate as a monarch with everything still ahead of him. And so the son who might have the most to gain from peace is the very one who feels he cannot allow it. That is the real story of Highgrove, not the reunion, the refusal. For years we were told the great royal rupture was Harry against the palace, the rebel son and the cold institution. It made for a simple story with a clear villain and a clear victim, depending on which side you had chosen. But the empty chair at Highgrove quietly dismantled all of it. It said that the father had already made his peace. It said that the institution, in the shape of an aging, ailing king, had bent about as far as it is able to bend. And it said that the one thing still holding this family apart is not the crown, and not the memoir, and not the courtroom. It is a brother who will not forgive. A father can open a door, he cannot make his other son walk through it. And so, even as Charles pulled Harry close, the family remained exactly what it has been for years now, broken straight down the middle, with the two brothers standing on opposite sides of a line that no single afternoon could erase. And this is what I keep coming back to, after a lifetime spent watching these families from the outside. We are trained by every jubilee and every wave from every balcony to see them as symbols, the crown, the institution, the unbroken line stretching back through the centuries. But strip all of that away, and what is left at Highgrove is painfully, ordinarily human. An old man who is sick and frightened, and who simply wants his sons in the same room before it is too late. Two brothers who loved each other once, fiercely, and cannot find their way back. And a quiet garden where a proud man did the bravest thing a proud man can do. He reached out first. He got one son back. He is still waiting on the other. And whether that second chair is ever filled may be the most important question this family faces. More important than any coronation, any title, any crown. Because a monarchy can survive almost anything. Scandal, divorce, decades of decline. The one thing it cannot manufacture, and cannot command, and cannot legislate into being, is a brother's forgiveness. If this story moved you, then stay close, because the fracture between these two brothers runs far deeper than one missed reunion. And in the next story, I will take you back to the exact moment it began, the day everything between William and Harry quietly broke. It is waiting for you right here. And tell me in the comments, do you believe William will ever forgive his brother? Or is that chair empty for good? I'm Edmund Hale. The crown weighs heavy, but the truth weighs more. I'll see you there.